Hey everybody, welcome back to another feedback video. Today we have a few ones to get through, so let's get started. This one's from Alejandro on the Discord. So I know you did a few iterations of this. This is your variation that you posted. I think this was super successful. I really love what you've done with this, especially from your first few iterations. I think it's really come a really long way. I think the mood is really successful. I think, the pose and the silhouette and your lightning strike is super successful. Um, you know, I think it's pretty good image as it is. If I were to be pushed to um, say what could be improved about this, I think, there's a couple things that I did on this paint over, and take all of these with a grain of salt. I think, use your own judgment and your taste to see whether um, this feedback kind of, you can pick and choose which ones apply to you. Um, so the first thing I did was kind of just brighten up the face a little bit. I think it gives sort of brings more emphasis to his face here, even though, it's not like he has any facial expression, but it is kind of creepy and emotive in that way. Um, and the next thing I did was just increase the contrast even more. Maybe this is a little too much, but you know, it does feel, especially when you turn this on and off, it feels a little milky, like there's a little bit too much atmo in this room. And this, compared to your references here, I know some of these have a lot of atmo in there, but um, I like how graphic it reads when you sort of lose a lot of the detail and you just have this like really strong silhouette. Um, so you could try that. Here I just vignetted slightly. Um, it sort of has like a reverse vignette right now where it gets lighter towards the edges, and I sort of darkened that down just so we're really paying attention to this middle area here. Um, One thing that I saw in some of these, it seems you like this sort of bloom that's coming around the characters, and I think that's what you're going for with the amount of atmosphere in your piece. Um, I think one thing you could play with, something that gives a similar effect is, and you have a little bit of it here, I see. Um, you could bloom it out even more, like it. So, you have atmosphere there, but bloom is a lens effect, right? So it's happening regardless of how much atmosphere is in the room. It's just when you get these super, super bright hits, um, it blooms across, these dark areas, which could give a cool effect. It's something I think you could probably do in post. I think, most people will do it in post. Um, and yeah, I noticed there's some reflections in the shoe of what seems to be maybe the light that's lighting his head. Um, if you could get rid of those, they're a little bit distracting. Like, there's not much in the scene that is this color temperature. So getting rid of that might help, just to get rid of some distractions. Um, One other thing is that this chest back here, you can see the rim that you're getting right here. Um, that's sort of confusing the silhouette with his pants. I wonder if you could take that down. I mean, I kind of like what it's doing, but in terms of the read of the character, I think it's hurting it a little bit. So maybe taking off that rim could help here. I think it's really cool to like read his kind of gnarly, you know, looks a little bit broken-ish leg there, and I think taking this down will really help kind of sell that even more. And one other idea that I had, that it might help if you want to do this, is just tilting it a little bit, tilting your camera a little bit. Um, might give like a little bit more of a unsettling effect. I don't think you should go a ton. I think it'll get a little cheesy if you do a ton, but 5 degrees or so, I think could help destabilize the image a little bit, and it might be kind of an interesting idea. And one other thing I'm noticing is, I wonder if um, working on the material for these bolts here, they're supposed to be metal, I think. Um, Maybe making them look slightly less plastic might help with the feeling of this, because you have all these like nice wood textures and the shirt texture, so it could help it, read a little bit more real. Um, you just want to be careful with like, if it is metal, maybe make it dirty or not that reflective, because you might get a super hot hit on the metal, and you might not want that because it might distract away from the graphic read. But yeah, I mean, you can see I didn't do too much to this. I think it's in a great place right now. Just some small adjustments, and I think, again, pick and choose which ones you think apply to your sensibility and your story. But yeah, hopefully that's helpful. Thanks. This next one is 3 frames from Marie on the Discord. I saw the previous iterations of this, and this iteration. I love what you've done here. Um, Sorry, let me take off those paint overs. So basically, these are the 3 images that she submitted, which I assume will be a animated clip at some point, which would be really cool to see. So I think this is in an awesome place. I especially love this first frame. I think this first frame really sells the scale of this. You posted some images of Jurassic Park and other dinosaurs that you were using as reference. I think this is super successful, even compared to those. I think it would be really cool. You were talking about, adding some explosions and maybe some bullets hitting the monster. It would be cool to see this warm light, which I think is from an explosion or some fire, to like pulse a little bit. One thing that we do a lot for fire is, let me draw. So sometimes we'll go, like with fire. Fire doesn't emit just from one point, right? It's not like, it's different than taking a light and dimming it on and off, on and off. If you look at fire and how it interacts with objects, you'll see shadows that dance, right? When you say the flames dance. So it would be cool if you're kind of trying to make this firelight, to make it so that you have one light over here and then one light a little bit offset and another light a little bit offset, and maybe between those 3 or 4, you sort of pulse them at different rates, and then you kind of get that effect of the fire is wider than it is, and is more intense in different areas, and you get sort of dancing shadows. So that could be cool to play with on these warm hits. One thing I was noticing was, it feels like these front buildings aren't getting enough atmosphere. They sort of look like maybe a separate element that was comped in. Like in an old movie, it kind of looks like a miniature. It was comped into the front, and I think what could help is getting some of this atmosphere that you have, that's really selling the scale of this monster, getting some of that onto these buildings as well. Might help us see like, well, we're looking kind of far away, but look how huge this monster is, right? Because I love everything you've done with the character itself. I think it's just sitting it in the environment a little bit more, and also, maybe a bad drawing, but I added some more kind of buildings in the back. I think it would be cool to sort of expand the city a little bit more and make it feel like it goes on forever. So this monster is rampaging through all of it. Some of these other frames I think are super successful as well. One thing I was noticing, again, this is kind of, to talk about integrating the character with the background. It's getting this strong hit, which looks like moonlight, from the back screen right, and the buildings aren't getting any of that. So I think hitting those buildings with some of this cool light could help a lot with kind of selling, this monster in this environment, I think you can sort of do it strategically. Like you don't need to hit the entire building. I think maybe hitting a portion of it and playing it like, oh, some of these buildings are casting shadows from the moon onto this building, just so you don't have like a huge white shapes along this side of the building. But getting some sort of hint of moonlight hitting these buildings, I think would help a lot. And it might even be cool, if the moonlight's coming this way, um, it might be cool to feel some of it over here, right? That's being shadowed by the monster. It could add some cool interactive like lighting, and as the monster moves, let me do that in white. Like say the moon's back here, shining down here, and it's hitting over here, but it's being shadowed by the monster on this end. Might be kind of cool to sell the scale even more. So just a suggestion, I think might help integrate better. And then this one it feels like you've lost that atmosphere a little bit in the back. That it's super black back here, and the I see a little bit of it down here, but it doesn't look quite as heavy as it did back here. So I think maybe getting some of that back would help. One thing that could sell scale, especially when the character is getting closer to camera, is really, you have these nice dark blacks in the front here, and then if you put a little Atmo as the character recedes, right, like on its legs back here, it's really showing like, whoa, this thing is so big that, a part of it is in atmosphere and part of it's not. So maybe just a little bit of that could help as well. But all this, I love what you've done with the character. I love this top light down here. You can see all of the features. It's not bad, I think, to lose some of it in darkness like you have here. But yeah, I think this is awesome. The interactive sort of fire and bullets and explosions and stuff, I think will make a huge difference as well for the mood. And same thing, you just want to make sure that whatever you feel on the creature, you kind of want to feel it at least a little bit on the buildings surrounding. And I think that would really help sell this image as a whole. But yeah, great job. This is really cool. I love this frame. So keep going. I think it's really successful. Cool. This is from Theodora. This is her first take at this. You just submitted something else, which is you're hard at work there. So that's awesome. So I think this image, the first thing I noticed, I think, is the bokeh in the back is getting really busy. It almost looks like the texture that you're using for the aperture for the iris has like a they call like onion ringing on camera lenses, where some of the bokeh looks really busy, and especially with these flowers back here, it's getting really like frantic, right? The bokeh is. So I would wonder, if you could go into your render settings and try to see if in the depth of field there's some settings to sort of calm that down a little bit. I think it could help pull attention away from how manic this looks back here, because you have a lot of frequency of detail going on here, and whatever you can do to sort of pull attention back to your subject, I think would help a lot. Here, I think on the character, well, let's start with the lighting here. I think this is probably getting too bright. It almost feels like this is glowing, and I think your intention here seems like is some dappled light coming in from off screen, hitting certain areas of this flower and of the character, which I think is an awesome idea. I think it's just getting too hot on these white flowers here. It's blooming out quite a bit where it doesn't feel integrated with everything else. So I think backing off on those a little bit could help I don't want you to lose like a magical feeling, but I think this dapple down here is working quite well, and maybe trying to replicate, something like this across the character would help a lot. Um, I think, it might help to soften out the light on the character. So I pulled up a shot here. I know this is a different mood than what you're going for, but something like this where, you know, you have this light generally coming from screen right? A soft light from, filtering through the trees, or, maybe there's a building over here, or just a street over here that's giving this soft directional ambient light coming from right to left, and then you have these hot hits over here, right? So by lighting it this way, like a nice diffused light on one side, and then just hitting strategically with the dapple in certain areas might help kind of soften out the image a little bit more. Um, I think, in this case and in a lot of cases, they decide to keep the dapple off of the face, so you can easily read the expression, and you can make them look more appealing. Um, Something like this is also a choice, but you can see how busy it gets, especially on like a older character like this that has a lot of detail around. I might venture to say like you want to keep it on the side of simplicity, um, and hitting the dapple, away from this very critical story point, where she's looking at this string of flowers here. So, keeping this very, this area pretty clear of dappling, and then hitting it on other parts of the image, I think would help a lot. Um, I've upped the contrast a little bit. It felt slightly milky, back here, maybe a little too much atmosphere. So I've done that, and yeah, I mean, you've said that you're gonna be pulling some references and starting to work with that. So I'm curious to see where you go with this. But I love the idea. I think it's a really cool moment that you have here. So I'm excited to see what you come up with. Thank you. This is from Michal on Discord. So I saw the previous iteration of this. Great job with the progress. Um, I think she's sitting a lot better in the environment than she used to. I think these bulbs, that are seem to be lighting her, I think feel a little bit too dim, and I wonder if you could just, um, like, they don't need to be so clear, right? Like maybe you light them up kind of like they're feeling back here with the bokeh in the back. Um, if they felt a tiny bit brighter, it might feel more motivated, this lighting setup. But I think the character lighting is pretty successful here. One thing that I would recommend is her eyes. It's easy to make them look, like when you have flash photos and your eyes look crazy because the flash is reflected in there, or your eyes look red. I think right now, with the reflection, she looks a little bit like a reptile, just because of that eye reflection. I've painted over, you know, this, but just by simplifying the eye here, I think you get a lot of appeal back in the character. So I think that would help a lot. The other thing is that in your references, you have some references of uh, color temperatures like this cool light coming from the sky in the background. I think this is really nice what you have back here. And I love seeing it hit these horizontal surfaces and seeing it along this wall. I would love to see it hit her more. I think she doesn't feel like she has much influence from this cool light, even though, back here it's getting hit by it, and even here it looks like it is. I think it could help to make her shadows feel a little bit less gray, and get some more color back into her shadows. Maybe, having that in there, I think maybe you can back off on some of these fills so that you get a nice like warm key and a cool fill. Um, and the last thing I think is the depth of field here. So you can kind of see the plane of focus is obviously on her face and her arm, but it drops off super quickly, and I think it's dropping off too quickly, and it doesn't quite look like a real a physical image. It looks a little bit like a miniature right now because of the depth of field, I think. So I think just increasing the f-stop a little bit might help you sell this image a little bit better. I wouldn't expect her hand and this table, she's right next to the table. I wouldn't expect it to go this blurry this quickly. So I would look into that and see if your scale is the scale of your scene, how that's affecting your depth of field, and if your scene is really small, it's going to affect how the camera and the aperture works. So you might have to increase your f-stop number to decrease your depth of field, or sorry, to increase your depth of field. So more is in focus. That might help. But awesome, great job, great progress. So this one is from Lily Tucorn in the Discord. This is an amazing image. I love this. You posted some reference here that I think you've really nailed the feeling of these. I love the composition, and I love these god rays coming down, being able to see the fish up there. This is probably my favorite part of the image. Seeing this fish kind of come through the god rays, I think is super, super successful. I think one thing, if you're looking at the value range of this image, it doesn't have a lot of range in terms of there's not a lot of really dark darks and there's not a lot of really bright brights. And I think, looking up at what is presumably the sunlight coming through here, I would think you would get a lot more brightness out of this image. I've done a levels here. You can see the differences that makes, and this isn't, this is on a PNG. It's not going to have the full dynamic range of what your EXR or whatever you're rendering out would have. But I think just increasing contrast and brightening up these lights does a ton for the image, especially when you compare it to these. You really feel that this light is bright. It's the sun. So this alone, I think, would help a ton. That's really my only note. One thing I think that maybe you can look into that I felt that I questioned a little bit was these rays. I think the way that God rays work, especially in this case, that it's most likely the sun, unless it's like a submarine light, which would be kind of cool. But anyway, if it is the sun, those rays should be parallel, right? And the reason that it looks like God rays converge is because of the angle, in the same way that if we're looking at a road from the top, it looks like parallel, and then obviously if you look at it from eye level, it'll converge to a point. Same thing with those rays, right? So it looks good for most of these rays. There's some of these that like go off to the side, or it almost looks like these ones here. Let me draw here. Like these are maybe a different light than these, because it looks like the angle is a little bit different. I would just maybe look into that and see what's going on. I do like how it looks like it's being cut out by this bridge here, but something about the direction feels slightly off just in this area here. So something to look into. And it certainly stands out a lot more when you increase the contrast. So yeah. But yeah, this is, I really love what you did here. So I'm curious to see, how far you take it. But I think it's almost there. Um, I think just increasing contrast like this would really help a lot. But cool, great job. And we have one more video um, from Theodora, who turned this around very quickly, which is amazing. Um, so we looked at this a few days ago, but I think the improvements that you've done here are really good. I think it's a lot more clear what's going on, um, and you managed to get the camera move on the dolly zoom really smooth, which is very impressive, I think. Um, it's not easy to do to match the focal length change. Um, so yeah, that's really cool. The moving this fan radar dish thing, I think helps a lot. I'm really dialed in on her, um, as well as moving those instruments back here. The point of the shot is presumably in the movie, the movie that this came from. Um, we know what the inside is, right? Like, what we really want to be dialed in on is her and what situation she's in, which is, stranded on this base with this ship. So I think this works really well. I do also love the rack focus that you've done here. I think it helps sort of transfer your attention to this, and I think this image with her here and the ship here really works. I think, I can feel her here, but I'm still looking over here, which is great. You were talking about adding some effects, maybe some dust kick up from the ship. I think that would help a lot to sell this. Um, but yeah, I think what you did is really, really successful. The only thing with the rack focus is that I wonder if it could happen a little bit, you know, maybe a little bit sooner and slightly less suddenly. It almost feels like the cameraman forgot to do it and it was like, oh shoot, I gotta rack focus. Although it does give like a sort of cinema verite sort of feel, so maybe that's what you're going for. Um, but yeah, I think you could probably hide it in the zoom. So like right in here, it starts to go to the ship already, and that might make it feel a little bit smoother. But this is really awesome. I think you've done a great job with this, even just from a few days ago. Um, yeah, one thing that maybe that I'm just noticing now is that you have this bright hit on this spaceship, which I think is working. I wonder if this background needs to be, or at least this moon sun thing needs to be a little bit brighter, because it seems like, this shouldn't, the hit of um, the moon shouldn't be brighter than the moon itself. So I might take a look at increasing brightness just a little bit on this. You don't want to pull attention away too far because this is kind of in the corner of the frame, but just to justify this a little bit more. But yeah, great job. This is awesome. Um, Thanks for getting this back so quickly with the notes. I think the turnaround is really great to see. My cat is meowing up a storm, so I think that's it for today. But thanks everybody. It was awesome to see all the work. Thank you.